You know, when I first started gardening a few decades ago, there was only 3 ways to learn how to do it, right? 3 ways. You could learn about it by reading. There was no internet quite yet. Personal computers were just around the corner. So you go to the library, get a magazine. You could talk to somebody who did it. Gardeners are generally very friendly people and are more than willing to share. Or you could learn the hard way by doing it. So a little bit of each. Here are some of the things that I wish I knew sooner. But it's really all about the soil. If your soil does not have little creepy crawly things walking around in it, if they don't want to live there, why would plants want to live there? Earthworms actually leave behind what they call castings, which actually fertilizes your garden. They help aerate the soil. Likewise, microorganisms show that your soil is alive. I'll share a little video of something that happened to me recently in the garden, right here. One way to know your soil is healthy is by how much life is going on in it. I was just doing a little weeding and pulled up a clump, and apparently we have an entire bunch of ants in an anthill that wasn't obvious. It would just look like some weeds, but here they are. But that just shows that it was a good enough place for them. One of them stung me, or whatever that is. They do pincers. I think they pinch you, but they're not fire ants or anything like that. They're just regular black ants. But I'm going to let them get resettled before I go digging around in there. I wish I had known which plants were really invasive. And now if you live in Arizona, that probably doesn't apply to you and some other places. But in many places, things like horseradish. Someone told me once the best place to plant horseradish is in an empty cement pool, in-ground pool. They were not exaggerating. Oregano and everything in the mint family, oregano is in the mint family, they are very invasive. It took us, I think, 3 years of mowing down the oregano before we finally got rid of it. You can tell, it includes bee balm. You can tell something in the mint family because the stems are square. So if you're not sure, don't put it in the ground. Even sage, which grows slow, can eventually take over a large area of ground. I actually learned that this year. Apparently cutting it back a lot makes it grow even bigger. I wish I knew which plants could cross-pollinate with which, and that at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter unless you're saving seeds. So can you plant cucumbers and melons together? Yes, they cannot cross-pollinate. Can you plant squash and zucchini, or pumpkin, say, and zucchini together? You can. You will not get a pumpkinini. You might the next year if you save the seeds. So it really doesn't matter. I wish I had known the difference between what they call determinate plants and indeterminate plants. The determinate plants, if, for example, you plant a tomato and it's growing great, and all of a sudden, boom, it just stops. What happened? It was probably a determinate tomato. Same thing with beans, and there's some others. Determinate plants will produce most of their fruit in a short period of time and then just stop. Where indeterminate will produce a little bit less over a longer period of time. So what you're going to do, if you're going to be canning tomatoes, you might want to get determinate types so you get it more all at once. This wasn't a biggie, but there was that made the gardening interesting. Write down what you planted. Draw a map. Don't rely on memory. They say that telling ourselves that I'll remember that is the biggest lie we tell ourselves. Until you can tell what a tomato looks like when it's a baby, or until you can tell when a zucchini seed pops out of the ground that that's what it is, you really should write it down. Markers can fade. I've heard stories of people's little kids picking up the markers and moving them all around. So make a map. I have maps going back, well, quite a long time. I have a whole notebook and an Excel spreadsheet on them. I wish I'd known that rotating your crops is really meant for farmers, not for the home gardener. Moving a plant 4 feet to the other side of the bed isn't going to do any good. You should always improve your soil, add compost, add more fertilizer at the end of the season, but moving it isn't going to make much of a difference. In some cases, some vegetables like tomatoes, onions, garlic, like to be planted in the same place every year. The exception would be is if you get blight on your tomatoes. Then you can either do things to prevent it, which you should do anyway, do things to treat it like a copper fungicide for early blight, or, I hate to say it, skip growing them, or grow them in a pot on the other side of the house. Maybe that'll help, but this is similar to what I was talking about last time. There are some plants that like to be planted in the same spot every year. Besides perennial vegetables like asparagus, garlic likes to be planted in the same place every year. And since you can regrow your garlic from what you harvest 1 year, I'll put the link to that video in the description. It actually adapts. The garlic will adapt to your own microclimate, and it is a good garlic. I don't even know if there is a garlic disease. The same thing is true with onions. They're related. They like to be planted in the same place every year. You don't, pick up your chives and move them to a different spot, or take them out of a pot and move them to a different area. They like to be in the same place every year. This would have saved me so much money. I wish I knew that seeds last for years. Parsnip seeds probably are not viable sooner than others. Some seeds, I planted seeds that were 10 years old. I've heard people planting seeds that were 25 years old. They might not be as viable. You might need to plant a little bit more, but they last for years. I've spent so much more money on seeds than I would have had I known that. I wish I knew how good weeds are at mimicking other plants. I mean, it's probably that you don't notice it because they look alike, but I think it was Doug Larson, somebody said that a weed is a plant that has learned every single survival skill except for how to grow in rows. So if you're trying to figure out, did you plant this? Is this something you planted? If you look and you see it in other places in the garden that you know you didn't plant it, it's probably a weed. If it's growing really healthy and better than anything else around it, it's almost definitely a weed. So you'll know as soon as you pull it out, because if it has the little soil attached to it that you transplanted it in. Again, mark it down. Even if you put in a wooden stake, you don't have to write what the seed is on it, but at least you know that this was something that you had put in the ground. I wish I knew that tilling the soil is not necessarily good for soil. The best thing is when your season's over, for us in the fall, add in a lot of good compost, till it in very lightly, and let it go. There's seeds that might be dormant underground. It would be weed seeds, and you would be actually giving them the light that they need to grow. It also can hurt your microorganisms. A lot of people swear by tilling. I know someone not too far from here who he just lets the weeds go in his garden every year, tills it every spring. The weeds are intense. I mean, some of his weeds get to be 6 feet tall, but that's the way he gardens. That's up to him. For me, I've stopped tilling a long time ago. I just amend my soil in the fall and plant in the spring when finally the time comes after the long winter months. I wish I knew better what plants need pollinators and how to do the pollinating myself, that more so. A lot of vegetables like carrots, potatoes, onions, garlic, anything that grows below ground, rutabaga, radishes, asparagus, they don't need bees or any pollinators to grow. Other vegetables are pollinated differently, like corn is pollinated by the wind, so there's ways you can help that along. Tomatoes, eggplant, peppers are also pollinated by the wind, but bees do help them. So I wish I had a better grip on that, and I will go into more detail on that in another video. else am I supposed to talk about besides parthenocarpic? I used to have the very mistaken idea that if I planted flowers in my vegetable garden, that the bees and other pollinators would go to them and not to my vegetables. Duh. So you need the flowering plants in your garden to help attract the bees to your garden. I didn't have a problem in the beginning because we used to have a beekeeper just about 1.5 miles from here, so we would have a ton of bees, you know, not more than we needed to pollinate our plants. Unfortunately, he has since moved on, and the new owners of the house took the beehives down. So now I make it a point every year to plant bee-attracting flowers, the ones that are actually labeled as being more attractive to bees. Be careful, because sometimes they will, if you get a seed packet that says, you know, pollinator, attractors, whatever, look at what's in there, because often it will have oregano and mints in there and bee balm, and you can't separate the seeds if they're already mixed. So look up that information. It's available online, and I will track down some of that for you too. I learned a new word a few years ago. It's parthenocarpic. I think it's my new favorite word, except for maybe petrichor, which is the smell of the air after it rains, or smell of the ground after a rain. But anyway, parthenocarpic refers to vegetables that don't need pollinators and usually are going to produce a seedless vegetable or fruit. My favorite is parthenocarpic cucumbers. I can grow them outside as long as I'm not planting other cucumbers. I can, but then they won't be seedless. I like seedless because I think it's better in relish. I like my relish without the seeds. If you're somebody whose doctor's told you to avoid seeds, you might want to try some parthenocarpic vegetables. I know there's tomato and zucchini. I'm not sure what else. But what I really like about the parthenocarpic cucumbers particularly is they're very hard. Cucumbers are hard to hand pollinate, so that's not something that I would be doing. I can just grow them right in the greenhouse. I can grow them outside at the beginning of the year and put them in the greenhouse when the weather starts to cool. And we have a little Harbor Freight greenhouse. And then I'll get cucumbers a little farther into the season. If we decide someday to start heating our greenhouse, which I hope we do, I can have fresh cucumbers right up till Christmas, which would be absolutely wonderful. You can grow them indoors too. I don't have a lot of light indoors, but I'm seriously considering when I retire, which will be November of 2021, so maybe when you're watching this I already have retired. I'm seriously considering turning one of the bedrooms into a miniature garden, a container gardens, where I can grow some of the things that I know I really like to have fresh all year round if I can. The biggest example, I'm sure, would be tomatoes. Because I would not buy a tomato at the grocery store under any circumstances. But anyways, you probably have some lessons that you've learned the hard way. If you please leave them in the comments below. And if you would be so kind as to like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps the videos get seen by more people. You can do that with the button below here, the thumbs up below, and also at the end of the video I'll put a link where you can subscribe. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps. Happy gardening.